Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you all to the Tax Resolution Help Center. My name is May. I will be hosting today's session and introducing today's speaker. I will also be coordinating the Q&A chat session at the end of this session. I want to congratulate all of you for taking steps to deal with your taxes. Taxes from all sources, including income tax, payroll tax, property tax, excise tax, and sales tax, represent a 35% to 60% reduction in your personal savings and wealth. As you probably know, those with 1% of the wealth in this country have experts to help them pay a small percent of tax. Our goal is to help you reduce how much you pay in tax by educating and informing you on ways to reduce past, present, and future tax expenses. We think you're entitled to live a happier, healthier life by keeping more of what you earn and getting the taxman off your back. Our goal is to provide you good information with the opportunity to ask questions that are important to you. The presentation itself will last about 20 minutes, plus 20 to 30 minutes for you to ask questions by chat. I will select the questions and present them to today's expert. If you wish, you can include your first name and your state. That would be great. Other than that information, your identity is not mentioned. The information you are receiving in this session is not specific tax advice. If you want specific tax advice for your situation, you are free to contact today's expert or any of our tax experts at Tax Resolution Help Center. As you know, these group sessions are included in your do it yourself membership fee of $20 per month. If you are not yet a member, please sign up today. We need your financial support. And to better understand what might be on your mind during the session, I might include some polling questions to ask you. I will then finish with a 5-minute wrap up. Also, a survey will be sent looking for your feedback. And finally, this session will be recorded. The topic for today's session is dealing with IRS and state tax notices and letters. The tax expert for today's session is John Shantz. John has the unique perspective of being both a business advisor and business owner. His wide ranging experience can help business owners and employees get through everyone's least favorite topic tax compliance or the repercussions of non compliance. With that said, introducing John Shantz.
Thank you, May. Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here. And as May said, we're talking about dealing with IRS letters, notices, and the interest and penalties. A quick little bit about me. Here's my contact information. After this session, if you have any additional questions, I don't answer the question you asked to your satisfaction, you are welcome to call me. I will do my best to help you. And we're not going to charge for anything like that. I'd love to help you. We have lots of experience, a lot of background here, a lot of knowledge I am more than happy to share with people. So there, again, there's my contact information. A little bit more about me. I spent about 10 years in public accounting. I ran my own business for about 30 years, land development and real estate, and now successfully retired from that, and now back to my accounting roots, although I kept up with things over many, many years dealing with other businesses and organizations. When I'm not having fun doing accounting, I'd rather be skiing. I hope you all have something that you enjoy doing other than work, and you get a chance to do that as much as possible. So today, the topics we're going to cover, going to go over a quick little bit about notice and letter basics, interest and penalties, and how they're computed and when they apply. And we'll touch on a couple other issues. This is going to be kind of a broad brush review or coverage of notices and penalties. And so you may have questions at the end. We'll give you a chance to ask those. So some of you may have heard, if God forbid you get caught in a situation where you catch on fire or see someone catching on fire, stop, drop, and roll is the old adage. Stop, drop, and roll. It's kind of hard to do, I suppose. If you're on fire, your first instinct is to run. And that's kind of the first instinct you might have when you get an IRS notice. I like to kind of take that and say, stop, drop, and read. Stop everything you're doing, drop everything you're doing, and read the notice. A lot of your answers are going to be in the actual notice if you can take the time to just take the time to stop and read it. Now, one other thing to keep in mind when it comes to notices, it's probably not an audit unless it is. And if it's an audit, it'll say so right at the beginning of the notice. So it's kind of normal. You get a notice in the mail, you see IRS or some state revenue department listed on it, and you look at it and go, oh no, what did I do wrong? It doesn't necessarily mean you did anything wrong. The IRS could just be looking for some information, something didn't match. Maybe you pay your taxes a little bit late, maybe you underpaid a little bit, and they're charging you some interest. It's okay to be a little bit nervous and worried when that notice comes. It's normal. I've seen notices many times over the years, and every time I see it, I kind of think the same thing. Then you just stop, take the time to read it, and you get a chance to learn a little bit of something. Couple other initial steps. If you get a notice in the mail, go get a copy of your tax return. Have that in front of you. Once you figure out what year it applies to, that will help you understand what the IRS or the state is looking for and compare that to your return, see what's going on. Keep the notice. Don't throw it away. Don't stuff it in the back of a drawer. Keep it in a place where you can find it when you need it. Deal with the notice now. It won't get better with time. Notices don't age well. All that happens at that point is you're racking up more interest and penalties if you do owe the IRS money. The notice itself is going to say what it is. It might say CP11 or CP2000, tell you the type of notice you have there. And then at that point, you can go to the IRS website. If you can't figure things out, they have lots of information there. You're going to want to know the tax year the notice applies to, the date of the notice, and the date you have to respond to the notice. Kind of the key facts you're going to need there. And then it's also going to tell you if you owe any tax or what other information is being looked for. So once you have the notice, once you've read it and understand what's being asked of you, if you agree that you owe money, go ahead, write the check, send it where they tell you to send it. What if you can't pay? Go ahead, go to the IRS website. You're allowed to set up an installment plan as long as you meet the requirements to set up that installment plan. I won't go into those details here, but it will be an option for you to set up an installment plan and pay it off over time. Again, don't let it sit around. Even if you don't have the money to pay it right now, get it taken care of and try to set up the installment plan and get moving on it. What if you disagree with the notice and what they're asking for? Get your documentation together, follow the instructions on the notice as to how to respond, and whatever you mail something to the IRS, whether it be a check or information, always send it certified mail so you can prove that you responded or you can prove you mailed the check. So here's a sample notice. This notice here is actually a CP11. So right up here, it tells you CP11, tells you the tax year, 2019. Right up here in big numbers, it tells you how much they're asking for. And then it's also going to list the interest charges on here. And here's where you're going to mail it. Over here, we can see what you need to do How you can pay, what happens if you disagree, your payment options. And I'm just going to move through here rapidly. And this notice, it actually tells you what changes they made to your 2019 tax return. So they'll list the changes they made. And then here's the tax calculation. Here's when it says your calculation, it means that's what was on your tax return. And then here's the IRS calculation and the difference. They'll take that difference and how much you have paid. They're going to summarize the interest charges. And over here is a little more detail on the interest charges. So every notice type is a little bit different, but you can see in this sample here, all that information is there. It's a lot of information. So you just got to take a little bit of time, read it carefully, and try to understand what's there. Talk a little bit about interest. The IRS charges interest when you don't pay your taxes on time. There's an underpayment penalty. They call it underpayment penalty. It's kind of mostly interest. The current rate is 7%, so it's a reasonable amount of interest right now. A couple of years ago, it was much less. Wasn't a big deal. You get a big enough balance, 7% can add up quickly. That rate can change on a quarterly basis. The IRS posts how they calculate that. Again, if you can't pay the full amount on time, you can IRS is going to charge interest on the installment plan. Same for most states. Whereas penalties, you have a pretty good opportunity to get some penalties removed for a lot of times. The IRS typically is not going to reduce interest. Penalties. Talk a little bit about penalties here briefly. There's a failure to file penalty. That's 5% per month, up to a maximum of 25%. So that can add up pretty quickly. There's a failure to pay penalty. Same thing, 5%, maximum of 25% for failure to file. The failure to file and the failure to pay penalty can work together. You can get hit with both. So you can get a maximum of 50% penalty if both of those apply. So you can see that's going to ramp up pretty quick, something you really want to avoid. There's also penalties for failure to prepare an accurate return. So if the IRS decides you purposely inaccurately completed your tax return, there can be a 20% penalty, and that 20% penalty is going to be charged on the amount of tax related to the accuracy mistake or the accuracy understatement of your tax. There's also penalties for failing to provide accurate information returns. So if you're a small business and you're supposed to issue W-2s or 1099s, there's a lot of penalties associated with those. Those can rack up pretty quick. We're not going to get into what information returns are out there right now today, but I just want you to be aware of the fact that if you run a business or a small business, you have some things to take care of there. Other issues, as I mentioned, information returns, W-2s, 1099s, small business issues. Payroll can be a complicated thing, even for a lot of accountants. You can remove a lot of headache from your life by getting professional help and using a payroll service if you have a small business and you have employees. Sales tax issues, those things can add up pretty quick as well. So keep in mind, if you are subject to sales tax and you're running a business, you want to get that taken care of. And small businesses may have a situation where they have quarterly estimated payments due. That really relates to paying your tax on time. So keep that in mind. Don't forget about state notices. If you have a notice from the IRS and you end up owing tax, probably means, and if you're one of the in the state that charges income taxes, you're going to have to take into account the state effect. So that was a quick run through interest, penalties, and notices. Hope I didn't go too fast for you there. Quick summary, as I mentioned, stop, drop, and read. Stop everything, drop it, read that notice. It's going to have the information you want there. IRS is going to charge you interest. If you have penalties, you can find ways to get those abated. A lot of times you can write a letter. If it's the first time you've ever gotten a notice and they're charging you penalties, you can write a letter and say, hey, I've always done things right in the past. I've been a good person, paid my taxes when they're due, made a mistake. I respectfully request you abate my taxes. A lot of times they will. Biggest thing you can do to avoid the big penalties is file a timely return. Let's say April 15th comes around. You don't have the money to pay your tax. So you're like, I don't want to file a tax return. I don't have the money. File the tax return. Even if you can't pay, say it says it's got a $5,000 balance due, file the return. That way you're eliminating that failure to file penalty. And that goes with almost any tax form. File the form. Even if you have to put 0 on it, file the form. Go back to what I said originally is avoiding it. Things don't get better with time. If you can't pay the tax, consider an installment plan. If you find yourself in a situation where you're getting notices all the time, you're owing substantial balances, you might want to take a look at what you're doing and maybe look at seeking professional help to kind of get you organized and get you back on track so you can avoid those penalties and notices down the road. And that's it. If you have any questions, let's chat, throw them in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Okay, thank you for that, John. So I do have here a posted, we have received a chat. This is from Facebook, a question. And he's asking if will the IRS send me a letter before they garnish my wages? Am I worried I will get my paycheck and it will be reduced because of some past taxes I owed?
Yes, they will usually send a letter before they garnish your wages. You got an old outstanding balance there. If there's a way to take care of it, I'd go ahead and try to take care of it before you get to that point. You probably don't want your employer to know you have a tax situation, and because they may be the ones required to garnish your wages. And you certainly would like to avoid the situation where the IRS slaps a lien or something on one of your bank accounts. So if you have an old balance due out there and you can figure out a way to pay it, my advice would be to go to the IRS website. And if you don't have an online account, set one up and take a look at the installment plan options and see if that might work for you.
Okay, thank you for that, John. So we have also another question. This is from one of our attendees in Zoom from Albert. And his question is, do I need to make a change to a tax return if I have already filed with the IRS?
Do you need, so let me see if I understand that, May. Do I need to make a change to my tax return if I've already filed with the IRS?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure specifically what you're asking there, but if you find out that you made a mistake on your return, you forgot to put something on there, then yes, go ahead. What you can do is amend your tax return. You can file an amended return. And when you file an amended return, it will determine, here's the tax on your original return, here's the tax on the amended return, I owe X number of dollars more, and you're going to pay that tax with the amended return. And then the IRS is going to come back and charge you interest on any underpayment based on the amount of time that you were underpaid. So if you made a mistake on your return, forgot something, especially if it was a W-2 or some type of 1099 or information return, you left income off your return, yes, go ahead and do that sooner than later. Eventually, the IRS is going to match documents, and they will send you a notice if they find something that wasn't on your return. You can kind of head that off and take care of that up front.
Okay, thank you for that, John. I guess the follow up question for this is how long can he actually amend the tax, the mistake that he has actually done?
Yeah, that's a good question. You have 3 years to amend your return. I mean, most of the time you're going to want that when you're getting a refund. If you left off an information return or something big, really the statute can run much longer than that, especially if it's a substantial number. Your tax liability never really goes away. IRS could come back at some point, 2, 3, 4 years later and match that information return and send you a notice.
Mm, okay. And then one more follow up question just for this. In case, though, this happened, will this be a bad thing for the IRS as your reputation that you forgot something, you amended your tax return?
Yeah, a lot of people are worried about that. It's like, oh my gosh, I got a notice. I'm going to be on the IRS bad list. Most of the notices that come out, they're just information matching documents. It's all computer generated. So for a lot of things, it's a one-time thing. There's not a list. Oh, these people made mistakes before. We're going to double check them or we're going to audit them. That's not typically the case. There has been a big crackdown over the last couple years when it comes to people who are claiming like the earned income credits or child tax credits. And I'm not going to say they're on a list and they're going to stay on a list, but those are areas of tax returns the IRS has taken a little closer look at over the last few years because there's been a lot of fraud in those areas. So if you're doing everything above the board, there's not much to worry about. And I don't think you have to worry about continual notices just because you got one.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that answer. That clears up, I guess, what most the frequent questions. Um, Checking right now. So that is actually our last question. Anything else that you want to add after this, or there might be a tip for them to avoid getting caught by IRS or any issues with IRS?
Well, I go back to what I said before, file your return. File the return. If you can pay something, pay it. Don't wait to deal with things. So file the return, file the return, file the return. If anybody has any more questions that pop up after they get away from this meeting, again, you are more than welcome to contact me or someone else at Tax Resolution Center. We are, we have a lot of seasoned professionals here, people who really want to help and be very fair with the people they deal with. So again, don't be afraid to contact us. If you need to just ask a quick question, do my best. We'll do our best to help you out to the best of our ability. Thanks so much for attending today.
Yeah. Well, thank you also, John, for your time. And it is definitely beneficial to learn more from a tax expert such as yourself in order to do a better job with our taxes. And thank you again for your time. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, May.
All right. And I also want to thank everyone for attending our session for today. And if you want also, we can contact our tax expert for further help if you have any other question regarding your tax. And our commitment is to help you reduce your taxes and increase your wealth. We do this with a try tax method of DIY, do it yourself, DIT, do it together, and DIA, do it all. Three methods, one solution. Reduce stress from no IRS or state tax debt and a happier, healthier life. If you are not yet a member, please join for less than $20 per month. We need your support to continue to offer more of these sessions. Since it is now tax season, we have many sessions to help you do a better job of doing your taxes yourself. And of course, if you want help, we have a team of experts who can do your tax return for you. Please check our website at taxresolutionhelpcenter.com and please join as a member today for $19.95 per month. Again, thank you all for attending.